Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this episode of Generate Now, the Microsoft podcast, where you will hear from our partners and our customers on their generative AI successes. Today, we have a very special episode. We have Hazem El-Hammamy, a senior program manager at Microsoft, talking to us about how you can monetize your LLMs. So if you have an LLM, an SLM, or if you're curious about how others have monetized their large language models, small language models, and other IP, stay tuned. This episode was recorded as part of a weekly Partner Azure meetup. We do it every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you would like to join us, go to aka.ms/meetup or follow me on LinkedIn. I hope you enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this partner meetup for Microsoft Azure. Today is February 27th. Today's topic, monetize your LLM. So for those of you that work for organizations that have LLMs and you want to make them available to the world, or if you're thinking about it and you want to know how other people have done it, this is the session for you. So Hazem, could we go to the next slide, please?
Of course.
All right, so very quickly, I wanted to give everyone kind of a heads up. This is the second Partner Azure meetup. The first one was last week. Excellent episode with Mads Bolaris, where we discussed AI Foundry and agentic services. And then going forward, we have sessions on NVIDIA. We have a security episode on proactive resiliency and semantic kernel. So lots of great things on the calendar coming up. And I would encourage you to go back and look historically at what has already happened. These sessions will all be on will be available on demand going forward. So please come back. If you're not on these sessions live, come back and take a look at what's happened in the past. Next slide. So really quickly, we do want your feedback on these sessions. It's very important to us to understand the topics that are important to you. So there is a link there. It's also been put into the chat. Please take a look at that link and tell us what you would like to see in these sessions, and give us a boost on LinkedIn. Tell the world about this session and invite your friends and colleagues and other folks that work in your organization. Next slide. And very quickly for everyone, we do have a Microsoft podcast on generative AI, a number of episodes published where we highlight partners and customers and their successes. So please take a listen. And if you have a wonderful story that you would like to promote about your organization, there is a nomination link as well. Next slide, please. Carlos, over to you for a couple of minutes. Tell us what's coming up going forward.
Thank you, James. As you can see on the screen, we have some workshops coming in March. So we will have one on Fabric. Please notice that most of our workshops and events are delivered in 3 time zones. So Indian Standard Time for Asia, for India, of course, and for the rest of Asia, GMT for Europe, and Pacific Daylight Time for Americas. Please also notice that the Fabric workshop is not a single workshop. Every month we have different tracks. So in March, we will have real-time intelligence, data warehousing, and data insights with AI. All of them, how to implement all of them with Microsoft Fabric. We will have another course on March 18, Build Governance and Security Strategy to be successful with AI initiatives. And Azure OpenAI, this is a almost monthly workshop that we are running. We are still working on the Databricks because we need to to move our lab platform. So probably that would be moved to April. But please stay tuned to check what is coming. The link is there, so check what is coming, and if it makes sense, please enroll on these courses and learn something new. It would be great if we can connect. My email is there, so please let us know what is missing, what would you like to see in the following months. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the session. Going back to you, James.
All right, Carlos, thank you so much. All right, Hazem, going over to you. Let's talk about how we monetize LLMs, how other folks have done it, and how people should think about it going forward. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. If everyone can hear me loud and clear, my name is Hazem El-Hammamy. I am a senior program manager in Core AI at Microsoft. And today, let me talk to you a little bit about what our model catalog offers in Azure AI Foundry, and specifically what models as a service can do to you so that you're able to monetize any LLMs that you or your company might want to make available to everyone in Azure AI Foundry. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the model catalog, what model as a service looks like, explain how you can actually make money on this platform, and what are the different components available to you. And then at the end, we're going to talk about, all right, if I was to commit to this, what do I actually have to go through? What does that onboarding journey look like? So I'll go through this session, and then at the end, we can take any questions if there are any. So the first thing you need to be aware of is the model catalog. This is where if you go to ai.azure.com, which is Azure AI Foundry, you will find a tab called Model Catalog where you can access any of the models that are available, whether they're first-party models like Azure OpenAI, such as GPT-4, O3 Mini, O1, or third-party models. So anything that is open source, you will likely find on the model catalog, but also very important third-party models such as DeepSeek, Meta's Llama models, Mistral's models, and a bunch of others. You will be able to access any of those directly in Azure and using the Azure ecosystem. It is very, very easy to make use of any of them. And there are exactly two types of ways that models from third parties are hosted: models as a service and model as a platform. And you'll find them mentioned in these two different names. You'll either find it called as serverless API, which is the models as a service option. This is the monetizable one, or models as a platform. Models as a platform, in essence, is essentially where you host the model for anyone to use on their own GPUs and own subscriptions. But models as a service is where we as Microsoft are able to do so. So it looks a little bit like this. Models as a service, all the user has to do is deploy the model, and they will get an endpoint that they can inference immediately. All of the GPU hosting happens on the Microsoft side. So what they're ending up getting is just an endpoint, immediate access to the model, the same way that you would today with Azure OpenAI or any of the other services that we offer. You deploy it and you get an immediate inferencing endpoint. Whereas models as a platform is typically for open source models that want to make it available for anyone to use on their own GPUs. So the heavy lifting is primarily on the user, where if they have their own GPU fleet, they can inference on that GPU. They download the model on the appropriate virtual machine. They make sure that inferencing is available or fine-tuning is available for it. Both of those are hosted in the model catalog, but as you can see, they're very different. And models as a service is the easy way to do that, and it's the more convenient way. You do not need to have GPUs on your end, whereas models as a platform, you do have to have and acquire GPUs on your end. Now, the way that consumption is charged to the end user is when you're using models as a service, you're using it based on the tokens that you're using. So for example, you can be charged 1 cent per 1,000 tokens or 2 cents per 1,000 output tokens. And the revenue for that model is then attributed to the model provider. So just as an example, Meta's Llama model, all of that usage is going to Meta. And then for models as a platform, there is no revenue that's attributed to the model provider. If you make your model available on model as a platform, you are being charged indirectly through your usage of the GPU that's going to be on Azure. So whether you're using models as a service or models as a platform, you are being charged just in different ways. For models as a service, as a model provider or a partner at Microsoft, you're getting that revenue. And I'll talk through what that looks like overall in the journey. So before we get into that, why would any model provider look to have their model available on Models as a Service? Well, it's very simple. They're very easy to use. I'll show you in a second where you can deploy a model and you can immediately get access to that model for inferencing and using it in a playground and immediately testing it. It makes that model simple to use. And that's where a lot of customers are looking. They're looking for the most simple option. And this option is very similar to anything else you've used in Azure AI in the past 5 years, whether it's vision or speech or language. All you do is deploy an endpoint and you get immediate access. You do not have to set up your own infrastructure. Same thing that you do today with Azure OpenAI models. It's priced based on usage and it's got stable latency. And so you know exactly how much you're going to end up using. If you are building this on your own infrastructure, it becomes a little bit more difficult because you will have to scale in and out based on the demand, and then costs could be very, very variable. That's from an end user perspective. From a model provider perspective, you are, again, not responsible for the scaling up and down. On the Microsoft side, we're handling that on your behalf. And you'll see a bunch of model providers that are already on the platform today, whether it's Meta, Mistral, AI21, Bria, G42, Nixla, Cohere, NTT Data, Stability.ai, and others as well. So there are a host of models that you can access immediately on our platform that are provided by other model providers or partners. So let me switch immediately to do a quick live demo. Let me just stop sharing for a second here, and I got to switch to another tab, and then I'll switch back. All right. Now, if my screen is visible, what you can see here is the model catalog. Here's where you get access to any of the models that we have available. If you want to filter for specifically the ones that are available as models as a service, you can click on Serverless API, and it will filter out all of the models that are available for immediate deployment and inferencing, as I mentioned, right? Now, let me just select Tsuzumi 7 billion, which is one of our partners hosted by NTT DATA. They have a Japanese and English model. And again, it's very simple. All you have to do is click deploy. The deployment type is serverless standard. You'll continue to deploy. You'll give your deployment a name, and then there's an optional content filter that you can turn on and off for that deployment. So this is the content filter that's provided by Microsoft. You can learn more about that when you're clicking through about exactly what's filtered out. And essentially what it will do is it will block any content that should be filtered based on what we provide as kind of the default configurations. So once you click deploy, it will start provisioning an endpoint for you to use immediately. And it's very quick. So now it's already done. And you'll see here, you'll get a URI, you'll get a key, and you'll get access to call that model through your APIs directly. So if you look at the Consume tab, there's already ready-to-use scripts for Python, C# that you can immediately start plugging in and actually getting access to that model within your ecosystem. And it's just an API, so you really don't necessarily need too much. As long as you can use curl, you should be able to get started. And if you want to immediately start in Azure AI Foundry, you can just open it up in the playground. And what that will do is it will give you access to that model. And 1 second, let me select Tsuzumi 7 billion. And you'll see here, I can just immediately start talking. Hey, who are you? And who made you? All right, and then you can immediately get access to those responses. Tell me your favorite place in Japan. All right, and then you'll see that these are a bunch of questions and answers that you can get immediate access to. You'll notice that it's very, very quick, and that's because we're always using the appropriate SKU for the model, and we'll talk about how we get there. And then if you wanted to view the code on how we can make this happen, again, it's available right here. It's available through Python or C# or JavaScript, Java. All of these are very, very simple and straightforward to plug into directly. All right, let me switch back to the presentation now. And 1 second. All right. Now let's go back here. Okay. So you can all see my screen again. Now, where these models are hosted, the first thing you need to be familiar with is Azure Marketplace. Now, Azure Marketplace is where any company can go in and resell their own software through Azure. And essentially, there's a very well-defined contract that's existed for years and years between third parties and Microsoft to be able to resell anything you want in the Azure ecosystem. That's already existed, and it's not specific to models as a service. And what is common between all of these is that every transaction that happens on the marketplace is that Microsoft takes a 3% fee from the partner or the reseller in this case, so that they can immediately use, so that they can service your software or your model. This is where model as a service's revenue arm is actually hosted. So what you do is you create an offer on Azure Marketplace, and then we will connect to that offer in Azure Marketplace in Azure AI Foundry on our end. So we will walk you through what that process looks like, and when you are committed to us.
Hey, Hazem,
yeah.
Your PowerPoint slide was on live demo. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. How about now? Was it on Azure Marketplace?
Yes, go ahead and put it in presentation mode, and we're good.
Oh, okay, 1 second. Wait. Okay, now what's happening? Let me stop sharing. And let me share again. Okay. It's probably on live demo now. Now it should be on Azure Marketplace. Is that right?
Yes, good to go.
Perfect. Okay. So the partner determines their own final price. So essentially, Microsoft does not necessarily care how much you're selling your model for. What we do care about is making sure that you're successful. So we will help you and guide you through that process of determining your final price, because we also want you to be competitive. It is a very, very saturated market right now when it comes to models, but every model has its own niche. So let's talk a little bit about how billing works as well. So essentially, Microsoft is renting out the GPUs to the partner at specific prices that we determine through this model onboarding journey. And partners can sell their model in one of two ways. They can either use pay per token, which is the exact same way that you would consume Azure OpenAI today. If you use 1,000 tokens, you're going to be charged this much for input and this much for output. Or what we call provision throughput units. This is where you as a model provider are setting a throughput unit. So for example, let's say 1 PTU equals 10 tokens per minute, and you're selling that per hour. So this is more appropriate for larger enterprises. We see a lot of large enterprises not want to worry about variable costs each month. My usage might be super high one month, so I might get a very crazy bill. I don't want that surprise at the end of the month. And what they prefer is provision throughput units. This is where, again, they're going to be setting a certain amount of throughput that they're allowed, that they can scale up and down based on their own demand. And so you can set that price per PTU as well. And we see a lot of success with PTUs when it comes to Azure OpenAI. But that doesn't mean pay per token isn't what enterprises are going to avoid completely. They also need to be able to test the model initially before making that commitment. So you want both, and both are available to you to sell. So you can set your own token price, and you can also set your own PTU price. Now, when you are using PTUs, you only have to request the GPUs to sell to your customers and rent those GPUs out when a customer is coming in and requesting a purchase for it. However, for pay per token, you need to make that model available 24/7. So you are renting out that GPU from Microsoft 24/7 because you need it to be immediately available, as you saw in the demo, that I can deploy it instantly and then just start testing it straight away. That's what we're doing with pay per token. Both of them are available. You can choose one or the other or both. All right. So this is what the commerce journey looks like. As a model provider, when we go through the model onboarding process, you decide your end user price and you launch it on Marketplace. Then Microsoft enables that model in AI Foundry using the Marketplace offer that you've created. And this is where Microsoft and you will work together to kind of just work out all the internals and engineering details. Then what the end user does is they subscribe and they use the model in AI Foundry. So just as you saw in the demo, I was able to click through, immediately deploy, start using the model. When I start using that model, I start getting charged for that model. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to get a bill and it's going to tell me, all right, this is how much I've used Tsuzumi, this is how much I've used Llama, this is how much I've used Mistral's models. And I'm going to get a bill at the end of the month. Then the model provider receives all of the revenue attributed to its usage, minus that 3% marketplace fee. And then Microsoft will then bill the model provider for all of the hosting charges they incurred. So any of the GPUs it rented out for that month to make it available for pay per token, as well as any of the GPUs that were additionally added on for provision throughput units, those are all going to then be charged to the model provider, and then the model provider eventually pays that invoice, right? So those are the transactions that are happening between Microsoft and the model provider, and the model provider and the end user. Microsoft and the end user is only happening in that intermediate step where they are making it available and taking out that 3% marketplace fee. All right. So this is what that model onboarding process looks like. There's a kickoff, there's a benchmarking and validation stage where we work with the model provider to make sure that their model is up to the standard. We're determining what GPU SKU it should be working on. Now, as a model provider, you should know roughly which one you typically would use or would recommend to customers. But we also want to work with you to make sure that you're using a GPU that optimizes your costs without sacrificing any performance or latency. Then we help you determine your pricing. Now, again, you should have a sense based on the competitive market, what your value is, and then determine your pricing based on that. But again, there is a process at Microsoft that helps you get to that point. Finally, after we determine pricing, it becomes very mechanical from there. The Microsoft engineering team will take it, host your model, make it available, and then we finally release it. It will be available on Azure Marketplace. It will reroute you to Azure AI Foundry, as you saw, and it will be available on the model catalog for anyone to use. You'll get an announcement card at the top where it says your model is now available on AI Foundry, and people can start using it straight away. So it is very simple. We'll go through this in a little bit of detail. So the kickoff process looks a little bit like this. First, we kind of get a sense of who are you and what are the models that you actually want to host? Do you have specific demand? What is your differentiation as a model? What's the expected usage? What are your use cases? And just to be clear, these are not just large language models that are available on the platform. There are small language models, there are embedding models, there are forecasting models as well. So if you think that you have a model that is not just a standard LLM for chat completions, you can still host it on the model catalog and make it available for people to instance. It is not just a specific type of model. We want you to actually have diverse use cases and come with us with those diverse use cases so that the model catalog can be a place where anyone can use any of their preferred services and models, not just a standard LLM. Now, these are subject to approval by Microsoft. Not every model provider will get past this phase. We need to agree that there is value in you hosting your model on the platform, as well as it's valuable for Microsoft as well. So once we get through that, we get it approved by the Microsoft leadership team, we sign an agreement, and we then start the model sharing process. So we sign an agreement for you to share your weights if it's closed source. If it's open source, we can immediately get it from Hugging Face, for example. And we guarantee your IP is protected by Microsoft. Now, there are two things that the model provider needs to make sure that their model has. They need to provide the model container with the weights, and it has to be applicable to the Azure API spec. There is a common inferencing API, which we share with you, and we need your model to be able to use that exact same API spec so that anyone that is using any of the models on Model Catalog can immediately switch over using that API. So that's one of the benefits of being on the Model Catalog. If someone is using, let's say, a Mistral large model today, and they want to test out your model, it should be almost no effort on their end. All they would have to do is deploy your model and switch it out in their code, because it's the exact same request response for any of the models. And that's where we need your model to also abide by the same spec before we can take it on. And then you also have to provide the model color details. You'll notice this in any Hugging Face model or Model Catalog one, is that there is a long page about the description of your model. We provide you with a template to fill in, which talks about how large is your model, what was it trained on, how should it be used, what are some of its evaluations that you've done in the past. All of these kind of just to promote your model, exactly what it does, so that a customer comes in and understands what they're trying to use. So this is what the kickoff process looks like. Then we start the benchmarking process. Now, there are a couple of key terms here that everyone needs to be aware of: input tokens, output tokens, concurrent clients, which are the number of simultaneous users requesting against your model, and then the throughput, which is the total number of tokens generated per unit of time. Typically, it's going to be tokens per minute or tokens per second. Now, what we're doing against your model is we're going to be testing a large sweep of input and output token totals. We want to see, how does your model perform on small requests? How does it perform on very large requests? How does it perform on one that is prompt heavy or generation heavy? So typically a generation heavy example looks like this. It will be, you provide a little bit of information and the onus is on the model to provide a lot of information. You're generating a lot. And we're testing out both extremes. Or maybe, for example, a RAG example, where you're providing a bunch of content up front and you're just asking a question, and the answer is very, very little. So we're sweeping against those two extremes and everything in between. And we're also testing different GPU SKUs, as well as at different concurrent clients. Essentially, the questions that we're trying to answer are, what's the maximum throughput that we can achieve for your model at different loads at an acceptable latency? And that latency is about 5 to 10 tokens per second. Anything below that, customers will feel that your model is actually slower than they can read. 5 to 10 tokens is exactly the sweet spot that we want to optimize for. If you end up having a model that can do hundreds of tokens per second, essentially customers won't necessarily need that. So what we could do is scale down your GPU so your costs are lower. So 5 to 10 tokens is what we're trying to find. We're trying to find a GPU SKU that gets to you to that latency at all these different sweeps of input and output tokens, concurrent clients, and so forth. And we want to optimize for the most concurrent clients, because if you can serve 1,000 customers on one GPU, then that just makes it perfect. If you can only serve 100, then when you get to 1,000, that means you have to scale up. So then it becomes more costly for you. So we're trying to help you optimize, and we provide you with a benchmarking tool to determine that. And so any optimizations you make, you can always test against the benchmarking tool that we provide. All right, so that's what the benchmarking process looks like. After that process comes pricing. So we then determine the GPU SKU that is most appropriate with you. And you always have the option to say, actually, we're willing to sacrifice latency for a smaller GPU. Typically, we won't recommend that, but you always have the option to set your own costs based on the GPU SKUs that we make available to you. And then you onboard your model to the Azure Marketplace, where you create an offer, and we walk you through this process. We will be with you on a call, and then you will create a new offer, which is software as a service, and that will provide us with all the right configurations to make it available for Azure AI Foundry. So once that process is completed, your model will be in Azure Marketplace, and then finally it will be on Azure AI Foundry, immediately available for use. The last part here is, which regions can you deploy to? So you can make that model available in East US 2 and or Sweden Central. Those are currently the regions that we support today. Essentially, we're trying to capture both main hubs, whether it's the US and Europe. We are looking to expand into other regions in the future. One thing to notice is that if you are using pay-per-token for a model and making that available for anyone to use immediately, the first thing is that you have to know is that you're paying to make that model available in each region separately. So there is a minimum price that you will have to pay, which is the GPU SKUs that you have to rent out 24/7 for that region, whether it's in East US 2 or it's in Sweden Central. You can decide that it's one or the other, or you can decide to make it available on both to make sure that you're capturing the global market. Does that mean that if I have a project in West US, I can't use the East US 2 model? No, that's not right. It's an API in the end of the day. So you would simply just connect to it as an API would. Whether you're in South America, you're in Africa, you can always call the model that is closest to you regionally. And just to highlight one of our partners that have been working with us, the Tsuzumi 7 billion is a Japanese specialized model provided by NTT DATA, and they've done a great job at making that model available. We worked with them for countless months to make sure that it was tested in a private preview with their own customers first before we made it available to the public. They were able to get a bunch of feedback. They were able to tweak the model. And then we got it available at Ignite. And it was announced at Ignite as one of the newest models that were now available on the platform. And something additionally that NTT DATA does was they also onboarded to what was called fine-tuning as a service. Now, this is very similar to models as a service. It's essentially an extension of it. If you have a model that is, whether small or large, in this Tsuzumi case, it was actually a smaller model, a lot of their value is in making that model available for fine-tuning. So a customer can come in and tweak it with their own data. And it's exactly the same process as before. We determine the price of fine-tuning with you based on which GPU SKU should be used to fine-tune the model. And then you now immediately allow anyone to come in with their own data. There's a standard format that they use for fine-tuning in Azure, whether it's models as a service or Azure OpenAI, that they can just reuse. And they can fine-tune it by switching up some parameters, determining your task parameters, determining your training data, your validation data. And then what they will be able to do is deploy that fine-tuned model, again, the same way they do in models as a service. So that's an additional thing to think about when you're thinking of, do I want to make my model available just for inferencing, or do I also want to be able to have customers fine-tune that model? So that's where we're at. And I will pause there and take any questions. If you want to learn more, you can look at the model catalog in Azure AI Foundry. We can learn more about AI Foundry and what it has to offer. There was a session last week about agents that was very, very compelling that you should take a look at. And then you can learn a little bit more about models as a service as well. Essentially, if you are interested in doing this, please reach out to me. And I'm sure our contact information will be shared with you at the end of this session. But on that note, I think that is it. And I will pause here and take a look if there are any questions.
Awesome, Hazem. Thank you. So we have some questions in the chat, so we'll take a look at those. We have a question from Kushai Kumar Parikh. And the question is, will the slides be sent out? So the answer is yes. On the same webpage where you registered for this event, the on-demand session will be published there, the recording, as well as the PowerPoints will be made available there for downloading. So yes, the answer to that is yes. We have questions from Jagannath. I don't know if you can answer this, Hazem, but the question is, if a customer uses Meta Llama, will they bind to the MAU-based license?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's an MAU-based license, but yes, every model provider's license is still applicable when you're using it in Azure. There are some additional kind of restrictions when you're using in Azure, but every model provider still has their license and you're still abided by it.
Okay, perfect. And then we have a question here from Jeff. What are the reasons to choose model as a service versus model as a platform? Pros and cons. Why would, in which situation would someone choose one, and in which situations would they choose the other?
Great question. So let's think of this in two use cases, whether you're the model provider or you're the end user. As an end user, if you want immediate access to a model and you want something that is the simplest, where you don't have to do most of the effort, I would use models as a service. The reason being that models as a service is straightforward. You don't necessarily have to acquire GPUs, and overall, as an end user, it will be cheaper for you. The reason you would use model as a platform is, first of all, that model might not be available on models as a service. So there are a select number of models that are available on models as a service, whereas models as a platform is going to be much more filled with models that you will see on Hugging Face. So a lot more of the open source ones. And again, as a user, if you have the need to optimize for performance at a very extreme level, what you can do is you can host it on your own GPUs, and you can optimize from that point of view, where you're building out the infrastructure, you're scaling it, you're running it on your own tenant. And so that's the other thing. Models as a service is an endpoint that's calling into the Microsoft services, whereas when you're running it on your own tenant, you're running it on your own machines, your own network, everything that you want in terms of isolation is happening for models as a platform. So those are kind of from the end user perspective. Now, from the model provider perspective, typically, if your model is not open source, it's closed source, then you want to make it available as model as a service, right? Model as a platform is only for models that you are willing other customers to download and make and use. So that means you have to share the weights of those models because they're downloading it on their own SKUs, on their own machines, so that they can use it directly. Whereas, again, for models as a service, it's protected by Microsoft. No one is getting access to your direct weights. We are making it just available for consumption, and that's it. So those are kind of the pros and cons for both.
So with the model as a platform, you're effectively giving full visibility into the models.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So question from James. If I have a model, right? If I'm an SI partner or an ISV, and if I have a model that I want to use for myself, is there a reason why? Is there a benefit to putting it on model as a service or model as a platform if I'm only going to use it for myself? Performance benefit, accessibility benefit, etc.
So if you're only using it for yourself, it makes more sense just to use models as a platform, because really the point of models as a service is that you are making that model available so that you can monetize off of it, right? You want it available for other customers. You want to make sure that you're capturing a user base, whether through your own marketing or through the value of your model itself. If you're simply looking to just make it available so that you can use it, it doesn't make sense to go through this arduous process with Microsoft, which is about 3 to 6 months. And typically Microsoft might not necessarily approve if they're kind of learning that you're only doing this just to make it available for you, and you don't really have plans to expand to a user base. So in that sense, it makes sense to just go to model as a platform. We will make it available. And then even if it has very low usage, if it's primarily by yourself, we want to have as many models available on the catalog as possible. So we will typically make it available there.
Okay. And we have a question from Abhilash. Can you give an example of the fees? 3% per transaction. What is meant by transaction?
Perfect. So essentially, any revenue that you're making off model as a service, let's say you're using the paper token. So that means, let's say you're doing 1 cent for every 1,000 tokens. Let's say you end up getting revenue of $100. That what Microsoft will end up taking is that $3 as a fee. So it's just direct from revenue. It's not for every individual request or anything. It's just based on the total revenue that you're accruing. Microsoft will take 3% out of that.
Okay, and that 3% is really there to cover the costs of
Exactly.
provisioning it, providing it, the commercials, etc.
Yeah. And this is also primarily because it's available on Azure Marketplace, which is standard for any marketplace solution, not just models as service. So we're just plugging into that.
Okay, perfect. And you may have answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. Again, from Abhilash, what is the average timeline generally for registering a model as a service before it goes live in the marketplace?
Yeah, so about 3 to 6 months. So as soon as you start the process with someone at Microsoft, we will assess, and that will take essentially 2 to 3 weeks. Then there's going to be the benchmarking process, then the pricing process, then the onboarding to Azure Marketplace. So if everything looks good and is very easy to go through in those first stages, it can be as short as a couple of months. If it takes longer, let's say your model is not applicable to the Azure AI spec, it's not running in even our smallest SKU, so maybe it's not even optimized for our smallest GPU that we make available to you in models as a service, then you need to work on optimizing that model. It needs to be on a specific architecture to optimize for high concurrency. All of those might take longer, and that's what we see with other model providers. But if you are set up in a way that everything that you've already done for your model is ready to go for Azure, then it should take a couple of months. The most we've seen is about 6 months, but that's, again, in extreme cases where the model provider still has a lot to do on their end.
All right. We do have a question here on AI Foundry. I'll throw it out, but Hazem, feel free to defer on answering if this isn't within your scope. So the question is AI Foundry available under normal subscription privileges, or do we need additional privileges?
You should be able to access it directly. There's no reason why you would need any additional privileges. For certain operations, you might necessarily need to have heightened privileges, maybe, for example, to request quota, whether it's Azure OpenAI, but typically you should be able to start using it straight away with a normal subscription.
Okay, perfect. I don't see any more questions. I will ask the audience, please type in your questions if there are any coming up. The one question that I would ask, Hazem, is any surprises for you in going through the process, things you didn't expect, that would be good for our community to understand?
Yeah, great question. So one thing is that we've noticed there is a preferred architecture when we're talking about models that can handle high concurrency. And so when we're talking about a model that wants the highest rate of usage and then you want to optimize for costs, we've seen VLLM as the architecture that is preferred. So that was something that maybe delayed some of the other model providers, was switching over to VLLM so that they could handle the demand that's coming in for their model and making sure that you're also serving it at that acceptable latency of 5 to 10 tokens per second.
All right. And we have another question from Jeff. With so many models available, is there a recommended approach on how to evaluate and choose one model versus another? And what role does AI Foundry play?
Great question. So this is a tough one, right? Every day there's going to be a new model, and that new model is going to be state of the art. It's going to beat everyone else on benchmarks, and it's just going to make it better and better. For you as a customer, making that model available for your application, it's going to be a choice between, do I always want to upgrade to the best model, or do I want to take a look at just keeping stability? So what you typically will want to do, and what AI Foundry can help you do, is select the model that optimizes first for your latency and cost, because you don't necessarily need the best model if you don't have the requirements to have the best model. A lot of the times, a smaller model will suffice. And whenever you feel like switching, what AI Foundry does is it makes all of the models available through the exact same API. It also makes evaluation very straightforward and simple. So in AI Foundry, there's going to be an evaluation tab where you can upload all of your training data, all of your evaluation data, and you can select all of the models in AI Foundry that you want to test against. Once you do that, you can then get very clear metrics around which model is performing better for your use case. And then you can look at the price for each of those models and determine, all right, this is the one that I want to use. It gives me the best bang for my buck. And that's what I want to connect to. And then connecting to that model should be very straightforward and simple. So that's how you can make use of AI Foundry to determine what the best model is. It's just by using that evaluation tab and building out that evaluation pipeline that you can run periodically, so you can determine, all right, actually, this model is now better. I've updated my data. I've updated my use cases. Now I've actually noticed that, let's say, for example, Llama 405B is going to be better for me than a GPT-4o, right? That's some of the things that you might need to take a look at. That's what I would recommend using.
All right, outstanding. So, Hazem, that is the last question. I would like to thank you for joining us today and giving us this overview. For the folks that are listening, these are weekly sessions. This particular session will be posted for on demand. I would encourage you, please share this. If you're part of a sales team, if you're part of a COE, technical COE, please share the registration. Please share this actual on-demand session once it is available. And then take a look at the chat. We do want your feedback on this session. We do want your feedback on future topics as well. And if you have any customer successes that you want to brag about and you want us to promote for you, we do have that podcast where we host customers who talk about their projects and why they are incredibly happy that they chose you as a partner. So please take a look at the chat. We have a number of links. Tell your friends about us. There's a LinkedIn post link in there as well. Give us a boost. let people know that these weekly sessions are out there. And I will wish everyone a happy week and a happy weekend. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Great day. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.